Welcome to the next episode of Hometown History's Greatest Inventions.
Hey everybody, this is Jonathan Miller once again with the Hometown Historian channel. This is going to be a little bit of an introduction on this first video of Hometown History's Greatest Inventions. So the idea behind this series came from a Facebook article that came up, and it had the greatest invention for each state, which as I went through and actually read it, it's personal interpretation, so I went and found another list as well. In this series, not only will we hit each of the 50 states, and in this first video, as you'll see, I'll do some honorable mentions as well. We're doing Alaska first. I'm not doing it alphabetical order. I'm just sort of doing it as I sort of like, okay, maybe I will do it in alphabetical order. We'll see. I don't know if Alaska's first, but anyways, I sort of went through the list and was like, they seem to be missing a couple of things. I mean, you're going to have certain things like New Jersey is a light bulb, and then you're going to have a number of other major inventions from Thomas Edison, because he did his inventing in New Jersey. That you're going to have like things like the phonograph, the movie projector, things of that nature, that they're not going to be at the top of that list. Light bulb changed humanity, changed when we could do things, and our entire day and night was changed with an invention like that. Sadly, on that first list, Jay and I were talking about it. He said, which state got credit for air flight, for instance, or airplanes? Commonly, you would think of North Carolina as that Kitty Hawk was the first flight, but Ohio actually had the first flight of an airplane that was legitimate, as in you could actually carry people in it safely, so you weren't like laying on the wing and, oh look, lost Orville, see you later, buddy. You know, at least they were only a couple feet off the ground, so he probably would have survived. But so looking through that, I got a couple lists, and I also then have done research on this particular video of what are the other great inventions of this state, so we don't leave things behind. Because Alaska, for instance, has the traditional native Inuit history, and the three inventions that I mentioned are thousands and thousands of years old, and they were inventions a lot of times out of necessity. Like something I would think about in pioneer days, Pennsylvania, the long rifle would be an invention that was essential. Of course, that's not going to be mentioned. Pennsylvania, they mentioned bifocals, Ben Franklin, great inventor. They also mentioned Ferris wheel in the one, but that Kentucky long rifle was essential to the frontier. So we'll delve further into these. We'll also this will be a series that will have several different offshoots. One will be the greatest inventions of America. We're also going to have the greatest inventions, world inventions as well, and just the inventions that made the biggest difference in our lives. So we'll go from there. So this is one of those series. It is up for debate. If it's from your state, there's a couple of them I feel a little weird about. I'm hoping I can find a better invention. Colorado has one in particular that's sort of like, it's a good invention, and I'm sure people are very, very thankful for it, of a certain gender, but it's sort of like, so we'll do it. It's just sort of the funny aspect of awkwardness, but I think this will be a fun series. I think it'll be a fun series. We'll have a lot of good times with this, and I don't want to say fun a third time, which I just did, but I sort of enjoyed this, so I want to have this also as a video series where I'm going to experiment with different things and just sort of have fun with doing this series and have it be like sort of an open discussion. do you think this is the greatest invention of your state, or of that state, or are we looking at something else in that regard, and go from there? It'll be a fun series. So enjoy. And first state is Alaska.
Alaska. When you think of Alaska, you think of towering mountains, glaciers larger than states in America. You think of mountains that soar so high, like Denali, our highest peak in North America. You think of stunning landscapes. You think of a midnight sun that never seems to set. One thing you may not think of, though, is one of our most quintessential flavors, which was started by this man, Stephen Henson. He was actually from Nebraska, and he loved buttermilk dressing, but didn't think the flavor was quite right. So while he was in Alaska working as a contracted plumber, he decided to add certain herbs and spices and basically perfect his ingredients, and what he would become known as ranch dressing. And this happened because when he and his wife, he had worked out as a chef in Alaska, and I think in Anchorage when he was out in the bush. Probably, I would assume out with like the pipelines and stuff like that. But that's where he perfected this. They eventually decided to move down to California, he and his wife, and they bought this ranch. And they decided to call it Hidden Valley Ranch, which turned into the company. That's where the name came from, for Hidden Valley Dressing. And of course, that company grew and grew and grew, and eventually becoming the company that we know today. I guess it was in the 70s he wound out selling it to Clorox, and that's where it really became the behemoth of dressings and condiments. Steve Henson had explained when he was out in the Alaska bush, he said, it's tough to feed men up in those bush jobs. If they don't like something, they're as likely to throw it at the cook as they are to walk out cursing. I had to come up with something to keep them happy. So the funny thing is, after they had bought that ranch, a Hidden Valley Ranch, his buttermilk dressing that he served to employees and guests at the ranch was becoming more famous than the ranch itself. And it was 1972 that Clorox actually bought the recipe to Hidden Valley Ranch, and it has over 70 different flavors today. So thank you, Steve Henson, for bringing ranch into our lives as Americans. So here we have our honorable mention inventions for the state of Alaska. Once again, whether ranch dressing, if Alaskans would consider that as their greatest invention or not, it's been on both lists that I found so far of different inventions. So here are the rest that probably make a little more sense. The first of these honorable mention inventions in Alaska would be the kayak. They were small, light, fast, and stealthy, durable, and waterproof, and the kayak is the perfect Alaska waterways hunting vessel. There are some debate on when and where the first kayaks were created and used, but there's no question that thousands of years ago, Alaska's Inuit people in Arctic and subarctic regions were among the originators of the constructing and utilizing of these unique crafts. Known as hunters' boats, kayaks were used for fishing and hunting, usually for sea otters and seals, but also for larger targets like walrus, caribou, and even whales. So these were pretty simple bent wood frames coated and stretch dried and sewed seal skin or other natural waterproof hides. But in these environments, and really these boats help them to be able to survive a harsh environment. So the earliest kayaks that they had were usually measured and customized to each individual, just their specific needs. I would even think maybe specific hunting needs. So the kayak is, if I could pronounce anything, is really the perfect invention for the Alaska wilderness. So the next Alaskan invention would be the ulu. It might look like a modest cutting tool, a sturdy handle atop a small, sharp blade, but the importance of this multi-purpose instrument to Alaska's native people cannot be understated. For thousands of years, the ulu served countless uses and cut anything that, needed to be cut. It was a tool of survival, efficiency, strength, and brilliance. It remains a symbol of resiliency and culture. It dates back almost 5,000 years, and it was made in different sizes and traditionally consisted of just two pieces. A grooved and hardy handle made of antlers from moose, caribou, or musk ox, or ivory walrus tusk even. Bone or wood was sometimes used as well. Sometimes they had curved or sometimes straight blades that were made of sharpened and honed slate. These were once again, just like the kayak, were personalized for individual uses, but this was another one of those instruments that, it dates back, just like the kayak, way back, because they were essential tools for survival in that Alaska wilderness. The third of the inventions of Alaska that we're going to talk about is another one that is quite old, and once again, it's an invention made out of necessity for survival. It would be gut skin clothing, waterproof and warm. Long before neoprene, Gore-Tex were created to combat wet weather. Inuit hunters, fishers, and families who lived and subsisted on Alaska's coastal areas stayed dry from the water, wind, rain, and snow by using outerwear made from the sea mammal intestines or guts. Yes, you heard that right. They pulled a Luke Skywalker or a Han Solo and shoved them right inside the tauntaun. So the animal insides were worn to keep humans dry outside. The process of creating clothing from seal intestines is a delicate and creative one. Part of the traditional harvesting of water mammal like seal included cleaning the intestines and hanging them out to dry. Once dried, the guts, which were already waterproof, turned firmer and whiter while remaining stretchy. The skin would then be cut into patterns and sewn using sinew from the animals as thread into light but sturdy parkas and outerwear. When crafted, the result was a decorative hooded and waterproof parka, durable enough that any outdoor adventurer would treasure and use often. So once again, this is one of these, inventions that was out of necessity. There was a need. Someone saw it. They're like, well, this is waterproof. We do it this way. Sew it into the patterns to actually fit as clothing, and eventually Gore-Tex, that type of stuff, the waterproof clothing that we know today, came out of that, different materials and whatnot in that regard, but the idea was drawn from that. So another brilliant invention from Alaska, and I will say thank you as always for coming along and checking this out with me, and as always, we'll see you all about town.